So tonight, it's just short. It's a short kind of introduction to some ideas that I had, which is in order to kind of pull things together a little bit over the next. A message has come. It made a sound. Yeah, my idea was to kind of contribute, to kind of pull things together a little bit, because the community, the kind of the people who, quite a lot of us, quite hundreds of people who were involved with the Companions of Seth, we're kind of all over the place, really. So we're very widely dispersed all over the world. So I'm kind of trying to give it some sort of common thread, really, and kind of so that we can use the connection in some way. And the way I'm doing this is by kind of sharing a piece of work that I've been doing, right, for a number of years now, or a way of working, which is to do with the importance of the ritual year. And I've done this in a couple of different forums. I mean, I've done a ritual year for the tantric group as well, but I suppose I've kind of, through research and books, I worked out a kind of ritual year that might be suitable. Well, not that it would be suitable. It's kind of like the ancient ritual year that was sort of the pantheon and the ritual calendar that was followed in Egypt really before the rise of the Osirians, really, but on the kind of basis that the earliest calendars were sort of lunar, and the lunar calendar is kind of got a very Sethian connection. So it lends itself to a kind of pantheon of particular deities that sort of rotate in a sort of procession throughout the year. So I've been kind of following that sequence, which I kind of set out in a book called The Ritual Year in Ancient Egypt. And that kind of is, with some alterations, is more or less my ritual work over the course of the year, really. And I find that that's had interesting repercussions, really, in terms of work. It does hold things together. So it was suggested to me by someone I was working with that even though we couldn't really do, because of the distance involved, do all the work together. Although I've been experimenting with doing this work with people, with one particular person actually, over Skype and over social media as a group, but it's probably too difficult to do this. But there may be a way in which you can sort of participate in that in some way. And at least if you know the sort of things that other Sethians are going to be thinking about on particular days, then perhaps you could add that to your practice, and maybe it could become part of it. So that was the idea. Or you could it might even stimulate you to dreams. And dreams and analysis of dreams is one of the big kind of Sethian things, really, that has emerged over the past period. Okay, so now with the new moon that's coming up next Friday, in fact, or Saturday, if you like, Friday evening, for us, is the beginning of a new ritual month. So this is a sort of prelim for that event, so that you could kind of prepare for it. And I'll try and do this every month. Now, so the month that's coming, which will start on a new moon, is would have been called in the old Greek calendar a Pyphi, but the Egyptians had another name for this, which is Ipet Hemet, which means Her Majesty, the Hippo Goddess. So you might kind of take from that the idea that the Hippo Goddess is kind of worshipped in that month, was sacred to that particular month, it's possible actually that the hippo, there were kind of 12 hippos in a way, or 13 that kind of rotate. There's a sort of hippo calendar, which is a weird idea, but But certainly the third month of summer, which is what's approaching, is sacred to the Hippo goddess, who has various names, Ipet, or sometimes Opet. She's a kind of birth goddess. There is a shrine of the Opet at Karnak, which is a sort of birth shrine. It's a very mysterious place that I talked about in another book, in which Osiris's kind of strange rites occur for the god Osiris. She's also known as Tawaret, the hippo goddess. Now, she's particularly interesting for us as Setians. Well, she's interesting in lots of ways, right? But if you've got an interest in the god Set, which I guess most people are who are kind of participating in this, she has a kind of pairing with Set, because she's a hippo, and of course Set, an important avatar of Set, is the hippo goddess. The hippo god. And maybe because they're hippos, they're kind of often paired together. In a way, the Egyptians, in terms of natural history, treated them almost as two different creatures, the male hippo and the female hippo. The male hippo, much more aggressive. Well, I don't know if it is or not, but they saw it as much more aggressive animal. They used to hunt it, and it was a kind of machismo thing to hunt the male hippo. Whereas the female hippo, they make her more like a doula. A doula is another name for for the role that the female hippo takes. So someone who kind of helps and with the transition of birth in one way. And funny enough, Set as well, for all his martial qualities, is also a doula. Also assists or acts as a midwife, helping in the process of birth, which is rather an odd feature of Set, right? That he has that very benign role. I mean, I suppose you'd see that in other aspects of the Setian mythology, where he is present at the birth of the sun at dawn. So that's a kind of midwife transitional role as well. So it kind of all backs each other up, and there's certain amulets, which I'm not going to talk about now, that are connected with Set as doula. So the thing that is interesting to kind of think about in terms of philosophy, if you like, or magical ideas, is this relationship between the two hippos, between the female and between Ipet and Set, because they're kind of connected in lots of, not just in terms of what they do, but they have this philosophical connection, really, or meaning connection. We're going to find, which I'm going to just explore a little bit. Now, it's helpful if you've got to hand a drawing of the star map, which, typical for me, I forgot to mark the page. Okay, so the star map, which it's not going to come out very well, is it? So that's why you have to get a copy of it. It's there on the. I can't get the lighting right on that. It's too washed out. Anyway, on page 194 of the book, The Ritual Year in Ancient Egypt, and on the top of the thing for this talk is a copy of that star map. And the star map is, if you look at it, it's like a grimoire. It's got a lot of kind of stuff encoded into it, a lot of magic, really. The whole document, right? It kind of tells a story, and I'm going to kind of explore that a little bit. So, but it's also got an interesting story about how that object came into existence, which is also about another primary couple, which is from the 18th dynasty in Egypt, Senmut and Queen Hatshepsut, who has a very famous temple in Luxor in Upper Egypt. And Senmut was obviously some sort of total magical genius, really, who mapped the stars and devised this rather elaborate object. And as I say, Hatshepsut was kind of also unusual because he's kind of like what you call a shemu. She's a female ruler. She's not just a queen; she rules in her own right uh, as king, as a female king, if you like. Uh, and Senmut is not of the right social class to be married to her as a king, but as her consort. They don't have that sort of thing, but they have a secret relationship. Um, and there's obviously a lot of love and a lot of kind of very, very mysterious stories connected with the two figures. I mean, there's even a theory that that Senmut is somehow the prototype of Moses, and Hatshepsut is the what would you say, the Egyptian queen who adopts Moses as a child, or whatever. So there's another kind of theory about that. And when they eventually died, and she has this very famous mortuary temple in Luxor, his tomb is very close by, but sort of in a secret way. It doesn't look as though it's close by, but when you go into the tomb and you go through these tunnels underground, you find that you're actually inside Hatshepsut's mortuary temple as well. You're underneath it. It's what's called under the front door, or behind, hidden in the door. And in his tomb, which is rather magnificent, is this amazing document, the Starmap, which features the Hippo Goddess and Seth, of course. So I'm looking at the diagram now. I mean, as I say, if this is too difficult to do, maybe play this later, and you can try and match it up with the text and look at it in the text. It's going to be kind of good. So the key thing is, if you look at in the diagram that I'm looking at, you have an image of the northern stars, the northern constellations, which includes the constellation Draco and the constellation Ursa Major and the pole star. And of course, the pole star kind of alternates between this group of northern stars depending on what moment we come to in the timeline. And the way they change places is also quite a key occult mystery. But so you've got a kind of great post, which in the center of the diagram, which represents the pole, the celestial pole of the whole universe, or the celestial eye in a way, eye as in the eye of the universe. Now, Seth, in mythology, does various things that are thought of as bad by other people, and one of his punishments is to be thrown into the sky, because he's already there, right? We know this is the way myth works. He's thrown into the sky, and he's made to stay in one particular part of the sky. Now, because that's the only way that can be done. So in the diagram, he's not shown as a hippo or as the famous Set beast. He's shown in his bovine form. He's shown as a bull. Which is bulls tend to be quite troublesome beasts as well, like hippos, and they're tethered to a post in the center of wherever it is, the farmyard or the enclosure or whatever. So he's tethered there, and obviously he's incredibly strong and powerful, and has a tendency to fly off. I mean, as people talk about this kind of nature of the Setian consciousness, it doesn't want to be held down, really. It wants to fly off to the edges. So the only way that the power of Set can be constrained and made to stay in the center of the universe, where it acts as the power that actually rotates all of the other stars. So to keep the universe flowing, and not to be overcome by chaos, which fly off to the edges of the universe, to keep it in its place and to keep it regular, and the process of time to be flowing in a regular manner. The only other deity that is able to anchor Set to the center of the universe and to keep him pinned to the pole is the Hippo Goddess. And that's her primary role, or one of her important roles, is keeping Set under control, if you like. So there's this rather interesting relationship between Ipet, the Hippo Goddess, or Tawaret, and Set, in the sense that they are kind of they're sort of chained together, if you like, because she has to sort of hold on to this thing as well. They're connected, and without her fixed point in the universe, Set will fly off to the edges and chaos will ensue, and the time will go all wrong. So that's one of the key things. Also in this diagram, we're not going to go into too much detail. You've got the Set also appears as one of the lunar deities on the bottom of it, the deities that are shown when you look at it with circles representing particular phases of the moon on their head. So this is a very ancient and archaic set of ritual ideas here. It goes back right to the beginning of time. And you've also got something representing the 12 major lunar festivals of the year. So the diagram itself replays a lot of study. I'm just kind of indicating a little bit of it now. But just checking a message. Okay. I got a message. I got a message from a friend after 20 minutes to say you can be heard, which is just as well. Okay, so I've been talking about Tawaret and this ritual that we're contemplating, and the ritual is not tonight. The ritual is for Friday night, and at Friday night at about 10 o'clock UK time, sometimes midnight in other parts of the world or whatever, then myself and my ritual partner, we're going to do this ritual in which one of us personifies the god Set, and one of us personifies the goddess Ipet, the hippo. And they somehow, as one does, right, in these sort of ritual things, the idea is that they maybe one of them questions the other. That's one way you might approach it. So we do an opening, the Tankam opening. We do an invocation, the invocation of Hippo Goddess, which I'm going to kind of read a little bit of it now, but it is in the book. The ritual you're in ancient Egypt, and if someone needs this, I can post the whole thing later. So we do the invocation, and we kind of one of us are going to trance, or both of us go into trance really, but two sides of trance, and kind of we're exploring. I suppose the two gods are looking at each other. There's an important thing is they're looking into, and because of the nature of the deities, that means looking into the eye of chaos. Sometimes that's another way that people have looking at this, that there's an important aspect to Set and all of these Typhonian deities, that they look into chaos. They maybe look the serpent of chaos, Apophis, in the face or in the eye, and do that. So there's obviously suggests the technique that one has to kind of look at each other and as one channels this. Now, if you're able to work with another person that way, but you could maybe just visualize this as a solitary meditation. That's the idea that all over the planet at that particular moment, magicians, Setians, will be replicating that particular mindset and trying to channel some of the energy and understand why what things like why is it the role of Hippo to anchor Set in that way, and what Is that a good thing, or does Set need to be released? Which is another suggestion, the releasing of the power of Set, so that he flies off and becomes, because he has supposed to have this tendency to be isolated, to want to get away from everybody, and that's kind of in his energetic nature, really, because if he's not anchored to the center of the universe, he does tend to fly off into the outer regions, to be alone, or is in effect to be alone. So those are pretty much what I wanted to say about the new moon coming. There'll be maybe other chances to replicate this ritual throughout the month, but we thought, as it's the beginning of the month, we're certainly going to do the ritual at the beginning, and we may well repeat it. I think as well that this kind of ritual works better when you've got the new moon, because if you want to see stars in the sky and things, it usually is better if there's no moon in the sky, which tends to sort of kill your night vision, really. It's more difficult to see what's going on. Okay, so we're getting close to the end of the ritual year as well. So as I say, there's an invocation which you can I could post later, or you may already have, or you may have an alternative for the Hippo Goddess, which is, I'm not going to read it all now because it's far too long, but I'll read maybe a little bit of it just to finish. And there's a suggested meditation, either as a solitary person, in which you encounter you either take on the form of one or other of these two gods, Set or Hippo, and you stare into their face and you see what messages come to you. And if you're working with another live magician, they maybe channel some of those messages to you, which is a technique that we often use, and certainly one gets better at the more one does it. Very interesting stuff. So anyway, I'll leave you with that. I've spoken for 26 minutes now. I was only going to do 10 minutes, 20 minutes. By the time I get rid of all the waffle and everything, it won't be so bad. Okay, so hope, and afterwards, maybe if this does interest you, and you have some interesting insights to share about the nature of this myth, and either Hippo or Set says something important or reveals something important about the relationship between them, then maybe you'll share that, whether that's poems or images or visions or dreams, on the group in the future, and that will help us make sense of what we're doing. Okay, so I'll just leave you with the first part of the Papyrus Turin, which is this invocation of the Hippo Goddess. Awake and embrace the void. Your heart is strong enough for its joys and strong enough for its worries. Leave it, and when you awake to life, you will feel young again on the new day. So rest, lie down, and be assured of long, good health.